If you're new in town or just new to this whole podcast thing, you're tuning in to Law by Night, the podcast that discusses all things vampiric with no fear of breaching the Masquerade. In this episode, I shall rank the main 30 disciplines in Vampire the Masquerade in what I consider to be the best and worst across all editions. Just over a year ago, in 3 separate episodes, I ranked the various clans, bloodlines, and Liabon legacies of Vampire the Masquerade. They were fun episodes to write, and seeing the conversations that spiraled after said entries were really interesting to read. Now I'm back at it again, breaking down my thoughts and opinions on the various disciplines, the powers of the blood that aid and also hinder the creatures of the night known as vampires. There are over 40 different vampiric disciplines, and I honestly cannot be asked to go through all of them right now. It is a lot to wade through. I have, however, narrowed it down to 30, which I'll explain to you now. I am using the V20 core books, Vanilla and Dark Ages, as those two dummy thick boys have the vast majority of disciplines between them, and I will look as to how they have been developed in V5. 5th edition. I'm not going to include the various thaumaturgical paths that is not integral to a specific clan. For example, I will mention Necromancy because it is one of the 3 disciplines amongst the necromantic clans and bloodlines, but I won't list the likes of Abyss Mysticism, Assamite, Setite, and Coldonic Sorcery, for those are taught to specific members of their respective clans. Maybe in the future I will rank all the blood sorcery related ones together. I will not discuss disciplines that have since been merged with other disciplines or ones that are considered dead. This includes, but not limited to, Kai, Kineticism, Mousephia, Nihilistics, and Strigger. Finally, Oblivion is not one discipline in this list. It is 2, Necromancy and Obtenebration, and it will be treated as such. I wish to add that all thoughts and opinions are my own, so if you disagree with something I have said, that is totally fine. It does not mean that you are right and I am wrong, and vice versa. Number 30. Fortitude. Right at the bottom of the list is the vampire's gift of supernatural toughness. In versions of VTM prior to 5th edition, Fortitude had no individual powers until level 6, which is where those elder disciplines enter, which you will only hear these days in whispers on the World of Darkness Discord server as being forces of legacy evil. Even with 5th edition, its individual powers either nullify damage or mental resistance, which I don't think are particularly interesting. It certainly provides the least creativity, and thus makes it the most boring of the disciplines. I rate this discipline Get Swole out of 10. Number 29. Animalism. Animalism should really be a lot higher on this list, but the discipline that allows kindred mastery over beasts is only ever used on literal beasts. Summoning rats, cats, dogs, and, in one case, a ferret have all occurred in my or friends' games. The mastery of beasts also extends to the beast of kindred, but the powers for that are so high up and are usually so specific that few can be bothered to pursue those paths any further. That, and games generally don't last long enough for anyone to probably make good use of them. Even STs seem to limit their true potential, keeping the animal in animalism. I rate this discipline various Tarzan noises out of 10. Number 28. Flight. No, it really isn't a discipline, but yes, I do know me putting it any higher than this would be taking the piss. Yes, this is a very boring and limited discipline, and is thus not very creative, and no, I do not care, cause fuck you, this is my list. I rate this discipline, come fly with me, let's fly away, out of 10. Number 27. Temporis. Reverse celerity, Temporis, sounds very interesting on paper, but its powers present far more problems than they create on a paradoxical level, as many of the powers in the discipline are remarkably broken. You could argue that they, the true Bruja, that possess this discipline, are meant solely as storyteller characters, but even as moody antagonists, they are just a bit too powerful and out there for VTM in my personal opinion. They exist solely for VTM players to try out Mage the Ascension. I rate this discipline Time and Relative Dimension in Space Part 2 Electric Boogaloo out of 10. Number 26. Dementation. The honed madness of the Malkavians manifests itself in this totally offensive discipline. I could end it here, but I am semi-professional with my criticism, so I shall go on. Many have said it is often difficult to use, which is down to the fact that all of its powers are really just variations of each other at different strengths, relying on the derangement mechanics of older versions of VTM. However, making it an amalgam of Dominate for V5 was such an odd choice, something I have always believed, even before knowing more about Dementation proper. It really should belong with Auspex if you're going to do that sort of thing. I rate this discipline deliberately bad mixed whispers in Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines out of 10. Number 25. Auspex. You have probably worked out the theme I'm developing here for this list so far. The ones at the bottom have revolved around their common uses. Once more, it is the more powerful and interesting things here that rarely get touched. The senses beyond sight are often just limited to heightened sense. This was a very deliberate wording because most elect to heighten their perception to sound and premonition in V5, which, like the rest of Auspex, becomes the plot device discipline, and those deeper spiritual connections also garner such important roles in the group. I rate this discipline most Malkavians out of 10. Number 24. Presence. When I started getting into Vampire the Masquerade, I liked this discipline a lot. The uncanny supernatural charm and guile that is presence is often more toxic and abusive than Dominate, and the amount of damage it can cause to many parties is terrifying to think about. The reason why it is so far down this list is that, quite frankly, I am sick and tired of its use in games. I should start taking shots for every time a Toreador character goes, I activate Awe. The slutty / promiscuous clan of the Rose stereotype runs rather thin pretty quick. I rate this discipline Strike a Pose out of 10. Number 23. Nifa. The Fey magic of the Quietus and Magar is clearly aimed for the changeling fan wanting to play vampire, or more likely, the other way round. Nifa is probably one of the more difficult disciplines to apply in a setting. That is, if we are excluding the fact that Nifa is the unique discipline of the Quietus, which I've only seen 2 people online play, so have fun getting in a game with those 2. I have always found it a very strange discipline and wouldn't be too bothered if the Quietus didn't have a unique discipline at all. I rate this discipline bibbidi bobbidi boo out of 10. Number 22. Daimonium. The affinity of the fiendish Barley is a curious discipline that is debatedly less useful as their main practitioners, the Barley, and are less playable than the Quietus. However, the discipline itself is far more tailored and focused to their parent clan and their motives, rather than just being a weird blend of pixie riddles and illusions. It does, of course, however, limits the player somewhat in a particular path / type of character, but this is the Barley after all. They know their place in the hierarchy of things. I rate this discipline Symphony of the Devil out of 10. Number 21. Celerity. Yes. Unnatural speed and dexterity do entertain me far more than some of the more creative disciplines before it. As a Sonic fan, as a child, being a speedy little shit lives in a special place in my heart, especially when I wasn't very fast at school and was often teased for it in PE, which is physical education for you Yanks out there. Trauma aside, as a discipline, even with the individual powers in V5, it is pretty boring and I can't really justify it going any higher than this. I rate this discipline gotta go fast out of 10. Number 20. Melpomene. The unique power of the Daughters of Cacophony is perhaps a more focused version of Dementation, less offensive and freeing too, letting the player really employ their siren to great effective use. That said, it is not really all that exciting as a discipline to me, which is why it is as low as it is. I rate this discipline Sing a Song out of 10. Number 19. Quietus. For the V5 players who have yet to see my episode on the Banu Hakim, the Assamites, this discipline is the secret of their judgments, granting them influence over the blood of others. Many of the blood sorcery powers in the V5 core book derive themselves from these powers and are fun to play around with. The reason why it is low as it is that it can be pretty confusing to understand, especially in the Dark Ages setting when each Assamite cast has its own Quietus variant. You can quickly see how this sort of thing can become overwhelming for the newer player. I rate this discipline Assassin's Creed out of 10. Number 18. Dominate. Mastery of the mind and will. Dominate is an incredibly useful and terribly sick power in anyone's hand, or mouth I should say, given it is applied through spoken word and eye contact. It is fairly simple to understand its progression. Each level of the power increases one's capabilities and numbers of individuals you can affect, the latter only applying to elders. Or neonates in V5, because elder powers are easily accessible to fledglings, which is a choice I guess. Now you know why it is not as any higher on this list. I rate this discipline, I activate Compel, out of 10. Number 17. Potence. I know what you're thinking. The two discipline powers that didn't have their own individual powers in pre-V5 were in their 20s, and this one is almost halfway through. What's up with that? Well, I won't lie, I just like Unholy Strength, and V5's Soaring Leap appeals to me greatly, despite its limitations and all of its V5 powers basically being watered down elder powers from previous editions. Flick, however, is probably my favourite individual VTM power of all time. I rate this discipline Hulk Smash out of 10. Number 16. Sanguinus. The curious cousin of Vicissitude is a much lesser but very interesting one to me. It has a unique take on body horror that could make the Blood Brothers super interesting antagonists in a Vampire the Masquerade game. The potential of their hive mind capabilities is quite frightening in of itself, but alas, the Blood Brothers are... well, the Blood Brothers, and no one wants them or their grotesque natures in their games. I rate this discipline, another Blood Brothers musical reference because no one commented on the last one, out of 10. Number 15. Vice of Attackia. This discipline is unique to the Gargoyles, adopting similar powers of Obfuscate and Protean, but with a greater focus on defense. There is also a pinch of Auspex and Fortitude in there, so it can be hard to wonder why they need other disciplines. It really offers a bit too much than needed, yes, but isn't it just spicy? I rate this discipline Brooklyn out of 10. Number 14. Thanatosis. The unique discipline to the Samadi bloodline can cause those and themselves to turn to ash and disintegrate body parts. Looking through the powers, you may notice that it is actually very similar to some of the Cappadocian necromancy powers, particularly the Grave's Decay, which really does provide a lot of evidence to prove who and what the Samadi are and where they came from. I guess the only thing stopping this from going any higher on the list, besides it being technically being a revamp of an already existing necromancy path, is how most of the powers that most players would have access to are all of the body. Perhaps one on an organ or bones earlier on could make things a little more grotesque. I rate this discipline Calavera Cafe out of 10. Number 13. Vicissitude. The flesh crafting of the Tzimisce had to be pretty high on the list, and what a horrible delight it is. When the body and bone become your canvas, anything is possible with the trademark power of the fiends, the Tzimisce. It is a truly horrifying power, as I am sure you all know. In contrast to my previous comments on powers, some of my more favourite abilities are the more potent ones, mainly Zulu Form, Chiroptean Marauder, and the Last Dracul. These forms have substance and plenty of culture. When combined in a setting like this, means it is filled with lore, and lore is good. The main reason why it isn't any higher on this list is because fans of the Tzimisce, usually the edgelords of the community or the downright childish in various Discord servers, are either over or underplaying the unique brand of horror in this game. There is little in between, which is a big shame, as it has watered down my appreciation of both the discipline and clan greatly. I rate this discipline Zasha Vikos' Testicles out of 10. Number 12. Obeah/Valeran. I am putting both of these here because they are almost the same discipline, the unique soul-working powers of the Salubri. One provides healing, the other controls pain, very nearly the same but ever so slightly different. The healing capabilities to do genuine good in the seemingly bleak world of darkness has always fascinated me, and the interesting lore surrounding the origins of these two variants of Solot's gifts. It is a shame that V5 did both of these powers so dirty along my beloved Salubri. I rate this discipline appreciative out of 10. Number 11. Spiritus. I feel I'm going to repeat a lot of what I said about the other mons when I was ranking the Bloodlines, as spirit manipulation of Spiritus and the other mons go hand in hand. The origin story of the discipline in the V20 Dark Ages version surpasses the original revival, for lack of a better word. The spirit in Spiritus is far more potent here, and I love it so much. It's such a shame that the other mons, walked themselves to extinction or some bullshit like that. It could have blossomed into something a lot more fun. I rate this discipline Steffi Devan Part 2 out of 10. Number 10. Protean. The shape-shifting powers unique to the Gangrel and its various bloodlines have always been a guilty pleasure of mine. The powers of Dracula himself, turning into beasts, becoming one with the earth and mist, are all very useful for players to have, including the ability to see in the dark via eyes of the beast. If you are a mariner, you gain sonar-like abilities in its stead and webbing in your fingers, rather than feral claws. It's a shame that V5 tweaked it with unnecessary amalgams and fisting Vicissitude and Serpentus powers into it. I rate this discipline Cry Wolf out of 10. Number 9. Serpentus. The trademark power of the Setite is ultimately a variant of Protean with a pinch of presence in here, as there is more focus on shape-shifting and corruption. Oh, and snakes and heart removal, can't forget about those. Other than the strange variants of the Protean powers and some of the more unique present-inspired abilities, Serpentus is an enjoyable discipline to me because of the religious significance it has of its parent clan, the followers of Set. The more skilled you are with it, the closer you are said to be with Set, the antediluvian of the Setite clan. There is plenty of character development you can have with this discipline alone. I rate this discipline Side the Snake out of 10. Number 8. Argon. This unique power of the Lianan bloodline grants the spiritual power of the earth that, according to some sources, is a predecessor or an aid to the development of Coldonic sorcery. This, and much of the spiritual shamanic pagan stuff surrounding it, makes it a very culturally flavoursome one of a discipline. I wish I had the chance to use it more, because it only probably works in a Dark Ages setting where nature is more apparent there. Even with that, it is a very limited discipline. I rate this discipline Pagan Shite out of 10. Number 7. Chemistry. The Ravnos gift of illusions and deception has been one of my favourite disciplines since discovering V20 shortly after V5. Each step in the power increases the complexity and functions of the illusions, which makes plenty of sense, and yet not many people get it, which I find odd given the number of mage fans in the world of darkness. Many just don't think their unique discipline, Chemistry, is particularly useful until you enter the OP Elder discipline powers, which players really shouldn't have anyway, for the most part at least. Such mindsets I feel lack imagination, for that is something that defines the Ravnos in my opinion. I rate this discipline, it's just an illusion, out of 10. Number 6. Bardo. I know this has been a fairly controversial list, and having Bardo this high up has probably annoyed quite a lot of people, but you know what? Make your own bloody lists, and yes, that pun was very much intended. I find Bardo a very interesting discipline, one that is taught through self-reflection and meditation that is tied to your humanity level, with its Egyptian-themed powers focusing on the preservation and manipulation of one's humanity. A bit too good to be true perhaps, and maybe superhero-esque in places, but I can't shake off my love for the Children of Osiris and their unique powers. I rate this discipline Bald out of 10. Number 5. Obtenebration. It was no surprise that the shadowplay and fuckery of the La Sombra would be in the top 5, and for good reason. It, and the abyss it is spawned from, are probably the closest things Vampire the Masquerade, and the world of darkness in general, will get to eldritch horror. Its totally alien powers wear down humanity, as you dabble with forces from beyond another plane of existence. For my complaints with the handling of disciplines in V5, that is one element V5 gets right, as the La Sombra variant of Oblivion grants stains to its practitioners. I did a whole episode explaining all of this and more, so go and check that out. I rate this discipline Kinky Hentai Shenanigans out of 10. Number 4. A Bombway. A Bombway belongs to two of the African kindred bloodlines, otherwise known as the Liabon, which are the Akananse and the Bonsam. It offers a strange blend of shapeshifting and earth-melding protean, be it with some more specialised focus, with the beast-affecting powers of Animalism. These powers are mainly for the inclusion in Kindred of the Ebony Kingdom for the Akananse, but in Vampire the Dark Ages 20th Anniversary Edition, a Bombway originates from the primal darkness, with a slight variant in some of these powers and an additional elder power to make one the ultimate predator. Powers aside, it is this lore-related reason that this power is so high on this list, making the Akananse, but mainly the Bonsam, some of the more frightening bloodlines in the world of darkness. I discussed these in the Beastly Legacies lore episode, which you can find at your own leisure. I rate this discipline Hakuna Your Tatters out of 10. Number 3. Thaumaturgy. The rituals and hermetic sorceries of Clan Tremere are some of my most favourite powers in the Vampire the Masquerade, each one capturing the pure evil and selfishness of the warlocks, whose mastery in this power derives from their need to hold on to their dying magic, not bound to whatever the fuck Paradox is. It is oddly very limiting in V5, which I guess makes some narrative sense, but its powers are mainly self-satisfying and gratifying, each path dripping with lore and pure evil, as they cause destruction to those in their reach. There is little humanity to be found in this power, and there certainly won't be left when you dive headfirst into the blood pool. I rate this discipline Kinky Blood Shenanigans out of 10. Number 2. Necromancy. A lot of what I just said applies to the varied death magics of the world of darkness, but with extra goth factor applied. I shan't repeat myself here, but I just love anything regarding the occult and ghostly in the world of darkness. Whilst many have recently argued with me with the misguided notion that vampires are human, there is nothing inherently mortal or morale about the use of necromancy, regardless of its use of application. Disturbing the restless dead, be it corporeal or not, is such a macabre practice, and the greater the power, the greater the risk and sacrifice to one's concept of humanity and degrading memories of it. I rate this discipline Wraith the Oblivion out of 10. Number 1. Obfuscate. Knowing my love for the Nosferatu, it probably didn't surprise a lot of you that this is my number 1 discipline. The powers of invisibility have always been a dream of mine, not so I could cause trouble, but moving unseen and unnoticed is literally the wet dream of every awkward and shy person. What is even better is that obfuscate is not true invisibility, but of deception of the mind, forcing them to ignore the user. It's literally what I wanted in secondary school. I rate this discipline that meme from Imogen Heap's Hide and Seek out of 10. And there, ladles and jelly spoons, is the Law by Night list of disciplines, from what I deem to be the worst all the way to the best discipline. It was very difficult to write, not because I had a hard time choosing, although that was a factor in this, but simply because I have very little care for the disciplines in Vampire the Masquerade, something that I've stated before many a time in various book reviews. That aside, it was an interesting challenge, and I would be curious to learn of your favourite and least favourite disciplines, so go on then, start chatting. To be kept updated, follow the Law by Night VTM Twitter and Instagram pages to find out when we will upload each episode. You can also find out by subscribing to the YouTube channel and clicking on the little bell, as you'll be immediately notified when the latest episode is live. Until next time, farewell.